Hello number ones, welcome back to my channel. This is the Metatron speaking, and today we're going to talk about swords. We will discuss swords in fantasy games. Okay, so as you know, whenever I have a little bit of time, I like playing video games. Not that I have a lot of free time at the moment, and for the last 10 years really. But yeah, whenever I have a little bit of time, I do play. And of course, since I am very, as you know, passionate for antiquity, for classical times, for Middle Ages, for feudal Japan, for European knights and everything, I like, of course, fantasy games. Now, I started off with very old games. I'm talking about the times when 16 bits were an amazing new graphics, okay? So I have played like Dungeons & Dragons Warriors of the Eternal Sun, a really good game that I've actually played again recently because I have it. I have a Sega Genesis or Mega Drive, like we call it here in Europe. And then I played other games like Golden Axe and this sort of games. But then I moved to role-playing games, and I played games such as when I became like a PC gamer more than a console gamer, although I am both, to be honest. I started playing games such as Dragon Age, which was very nice on PC because you could get all the mods, and Dragon Age Origins was really the best one. But I've also I tried a little bit Dragon Age 2, and I didn't like it at all. Dragon Age Inquisition, still playing it, still trying to make my mind about it. But back to the point of the video, I then moved to MMORPGs. Now, MMORPGs are interesting sometimes because, of course, first of all, they take a lot of time, and normally when I play, it's either summer or Christmas time, because whenever, you know, if you have a job, you can't play an MMORPG. It makes no sense to just sit down for an hour. You're doing absolutely nothing. So in MMORPGs, it really struck me the most that swords, because again I play characters that use swords all the time. If there is a swordsman, I will choose that class. Swords they make no sense, okay? Of course they're fantasy swords and it's a fantasy world, so they shouldn't make sense, should they? I mean, a fantasy setting is a setting in which the creators and even the players, they can just expand their imaginations without limit. So of course the weapons and armor in weapons, gears and armors and everything will reflect just that, the opportunity to express yourself, and I totally agree with that. I have no problems. And of course when you see those badass, cap level sort of gear, and it looks fantastic, it actually makes you want to play the game more and more. And that's the same for swords, of course. You've got a very badass sword and it's amazing looking and it looks like the sword that only a demon could wield. Then of course you feel like, or an angel or a god, then you feel like, oh my goodness, I really want that sword. But it's not really the point, that's not the problem. It's fine, my character is a hero. My character sometimes is imbued in magic, and so it's a different world. We're fighting monsters. These monsters, and most of the times they're like 100 times bigger than us, and so it makes sense that the swords we use, perhaps they've got magic, enchanted. The problem is that what really puzzles me is that if you look at low tier weapons and low tier swords, they look plausible, believable. The techniques might be applicable. They look realistic. Like, for example, let's have a look at Terra, and let's have a look at Black Desert Online. These are two games that I've played, and Dragon Nest, okay? 3 games that I've tried. I've tried many others. These games, I think, they sort of sum it up for us. If you look at the low-tier swords of these games, you will notice that the swords are quite similar to real historical examples. But as you level up, and you move to other tiers, like level 5 tier, and level 10, level 22, level 24, 32, whatever, 40, 50, 70. The swords become more and more complicated, they become bigger, they're full of lights, and they end up just looking like a Christmas tree. So what I'm trying to say is, it's okay, but it's strange because when I look at it, considering I get mixed feelings, and this video is not a rant, it's not a video against fantasy games. It's a video where I'd like to know, it's just to share my feelings, the feelings I get as someone who loves games and fantasy setting, but also understands historical swords and the way they work. In this video, I just want to share this opinion, and I'd like to know if there are other people who feel like I do, because when I see a sword that looks similar to this, it looks better. So when I have to change it for something that it's incredibly big, but it's still not as cool looking as the level cup sword, And it's this in-between hybrid between a sword that is not really believable nor functional anymore, but it's still not as cool as the level cap sword. For me, that in-between is, oh my goodness, it's difficult, it's terrible. Like, I think the sword you had before, it looked just perfect. It had good balance, it had an edge, the edge was good, the blade geometry looked good, the hilt was not too big, the pommel looked realistic. It's nice and I liked it. It made me feel like I'm a warrior of ancient times, like I'm a knight, you know, or a samurai, for example, although we will get back to Japanese swords in the second part of this video. But level cap swords, it's fine. I'm so strong with my character by that point that it doesn't really matter the sort of sword that I'm wielding. But those in between, which take a lot of time, because you know how these games are. It's very, very quick to level up the first 5, 10 levels, 12 levels, because that's what they want. They want you to feel that the game is easy and that you are progressing, and so you feel like you are achieving something and you want to continue. But then the last levels between you get to the actual level cap, they take forever. And I'm stuck with this in-between gear that really drives me nuts. And I'm like, I want to go back to the sword, and I've tried sometimes. I went back to low-level swords, and of course you can't do anything with those, because you've got to, once you reach a certain level, then you have to use the gear for that level. So for me, it's a problem. I don't know if you feel like that. I don't know if I'm the only one like that, but it's something that really sort of drives me nuts when I play these games. Now, the second point I'd like to make for this video is Japanese swords in fantasy games. In this case, we're talking about katana and whatnot. What really puzzles me again is that, look at it. In any game where you have European-looking knights, they change because they become their fantasy equivalent, and of course the weapons and armors, they resemble European real examples of historical examples, but they start changing until they actually don't even look like it anymore. When you have a character that is similar to a Japanese samurai, or in other games you have just characters who use Japanese swords, for example this one here, which comes from the Devil May Cry series. This is Virgil's sword. What happens is that Japanese looking characters don't look different or that different from reality, and I don't understand why. I mean, katana looks just like, I mean, look at this one. It's okay, it's a believable katana. Of course it's a little strange here, but that's the only point. I mean, compared to a fantasy European sword, it's a mess most of the times. It's almost not recognizable to a certain extent if you compare it to an accurate replica of a sword. But that does not seem to happen with Japanese swords. Sometimes you have katana that look a bit strange perhaps, but most of the times they look very similar. They just get fancy colors, but pretty much that's the only thing I see changing. On occasion you've got like the guard, the tsuka or the tsuba that are slightly different. They've got a little bit of strange, perhaps dragon, but you do find those as well in, for example, ceremonial katana sometimes in Japan. So they're very similar, but even Japanese armors look quite realistic. Let's have a look at games such as Way of the Samurai. The armors are absolutely believable, and that's again something similar even in Black Desert Online, regardless of the fact that it's completely fantasy and you've got monsters and dragons flying around, but the samurai inspired armors look quite believable. And the only thing that really happens is that sometimes katana become really, really big, but again it happens as well in reality. You've got nodachi in reality, you've got odachi, you have nagamaki, and even Sephiroth, huge nodachi. The only strange thing about that sword is its length. But we've got historical examples of that. For example, this huge sword here, that of course was never used into battle. Of course it's a ceremonial sword. It was more of a gift to the gods and a representation of the ability and skill of the smith who created it. But still, it's only length and the fact that that a rather thin character is using it, that's the only fantasy component. But the sword itself, the way it's built, maybe the hilt, the handle is a bit too short for the length of the blade, but still it's not as strange and colorful and full of lights and full of cuts and full of holes or like insanely thick like some European fantasy sword equivalents are. I have no idea why this happens, but I would be interested to know your opinion in the comments below. Alright then, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please remember thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more content from the Metatron. And also, please tell me, have you ever played an MMORPG? And if you have, Which one would be your favorite? Please let me know in the comments below, and remember, the Metatron has spread his wings. Goodbye.